Welcome to Revenge Report. Don't forget to hit that like button and subscribe for more. Let's dive in. My boots hit the driveway just past midnight, and right away, I knew something was off. The porch light wasn't on. The upstairs unit had moving boxes stacked against the window, and the military decal I'd slapped onto the front glass 3 years ago was gone, peeled clean like I was never there. My condo looked like it belonged to someone else. Name's Ashley Monroe. I'm 34. I live, or used to live, in Missoula, Montana. I've been driving long-haul reefer freight coast to coast for the last 11 years. This last run was 9 weeks straight. Texas to Boston, California to Maine, back again. I hadn't slept in a real bed since June. I dragged my duffel over the curb and tried my key. Didn't turn. I flipped it over, tried again. No dice. I stepped back, stared at the door, heart pounding. My boots crunched over rock salt as I shifted the weight of my fireproof case in one hand and knocked, hard. After a few seconds, the porch light flicked on, and my dad opened the door. He didn't look surprised. He looked settled. He had a coffee in his hand and was wearing slippers, like he lived here. Behind him, I caught a glimpse of framed photos I'd never seen before. His new wife smiling by the fireplace I installed myself 3 winters ago. Dad? He didn't flinch, just sipped. You don't live here anymore? We need the space, I laughed, thinking I misheard. You what? You've been gone 2 months. The condo's in transition. We changed the locks. No call? No warning? Where's my stuff? Donated, he said, like it was a normal Tuesday. We kept your paperwork. That box you keep locked. We didn't touch that. He pointed at the fireproof case still in my hand. I hadn't let that out of my truck. That meant he went through everything else. Bedroom, kitchen, the safe under the sink. Quick note, before we get deeper into this mess, share which city or country you're watching from. I looked past him, hoping this was some temporary screw-up, some joke. But the mailbox confirmed it. My name was scraped off. His last name, just his, was there in neat black letters. I scanned the porch one last time. No welcome mat, no trucker boots, no hint I ever lived here. I didn't argue, I didn't scream, I didn't beg. I turned, boots grinding the gravel, and walked. The duffel dug into my shoulder, heavy with the last clothes I owned. The fireproof case slammed against my thigh as I picked up speed. This wasn't a mistake. This was a clean-out, and it had been planned. 5 days earlier, I was still hauling freight through Denver, chasing the last drop-off before heading home. I'd pulled into a truck stop for coffee when my phone buzzed. Dad, don't come home. Things changed. That was it. No, how's the route? No, when are you back? Just that. It punched harder than it should have. My stomach dropped, and not from the trucker coffee. I opened my banking app on instinct. I had around $18,000 coming in. Back pay for a contract haul that took me from Sacramento to Jersey and back again. I'd been counting on that money to cover property tax and restock the fridge after being gone so long. Balance, $93.17. No pending deposits, no scheduled withdrawals. Gone. I was parked in the back lot of a Love's off I-70, air brakes still hissing as I sat staring at the screen, jaw locked. My name and my dad's were both still on the account. We'd opened it years ago after Mom passed. I never took him off. Stupid. I tapped the number on the back of the debit card and waded through the canned music. A woman picked up. Friendly voice, Midwest accent. She asked me to verify my details, and I did. Then she asked if I'd like her to review recent transactions. Yeah. Start with the last deposit from Keystone Logistics. Then tell me where it went. I heard the click of her keyboard, a short pause. Well, the deposit was received 5 days ago, $17,912. Then the account was emptied within 48 hours. To where? I said, sharper than I meant to. Multiple outgoing payments, utilities, a property tax draft, then a business transfer, listed under Monroe Freight Services, LLCI, blinked. That's not my company. The transfer was authorized by the joint account holder. I didn't respond. Not right away. I couldn't speak through the way my throat locked up. Would you like me to flag the account for review? No, I said. I've got what I need. I hung up before she could read the thank you script. Back at the depot, I didn't go inside. I booked a room at the roadside motel across the street and unlocked the back of my cab. Still in my uniform, I pulled out the fireproof case I kept under my bunk, flipped it open, sorted through folders until I found what I needed: the condo deed, account agreements, my lease, pay stubs from the last 6 runs, and a list of access logs from the bank's app showing his IP. That night, I sat on the scratchy motel bed with my laptop balanced on a shoebox and started building the file. Quick note: before we go deeper, how's your day going and where are you joining from? The anger burned hot, but it was controlled. I've had engines blow out in the Rockies at 2 a.m. I've slid across black ice in Oklahoma with 20 tons of freight behind me. Panic doesn't help, focus does. I compiled everything into a folder called Asset Misuse, internal, tagged each file with dates, circled amounts, screenshot the message he'd sent, cold and clipped. Don't come home. When I hit send, it went straight to Andrew Brody's inbox. I hadn't talked to Brody in years, not since a freight scam case I'd been looped into when a shipping broker tried to short my pay using fake trailer weights. He worked federal transport crimes, good reputation, no red tape, smart, sharp, relentless. I didn't ask for help. I sent the file with a subject line that said everything: unauthorized withdrawal of federally contracted driver wages, urgent review requested. Under the message body, I typed, perpetrator is a co-signer on the account. Family member. Money rerouted to unregistered freight LLC I have no connection to. Personal residence potentially seized. Requesting eyes on this before I report theft. I closed the laptop and locked it back in the case. My fingers were shaking, but not from fear. It wasn't grief either. It was clarity. Whatever this was, it was deliberate, planned, executed while I was 2,000 miles away hauling lettuce and insulin across 4 states. He didn't expect me to catch it this fast. Too bad for him. I log everything. I see everything. I slid my boots off, folded my arms behind my head, and stared at the peeling motel ceiling. I knew what this was now, and I wasn't letting it slide. The smell of burnt espresso hit me the second I stepped inside Ferris grounds. It was an old brick corner shop right off the freight yard, stools worn smooth, posters of classic rigs pinned to the back wall, and a busted radar gun mounted over the register like a joke. The kind of place drivers came to kill time between dispatches or sober up after an all-nighter. I'd been stopping in for years. Jake Ferris stood behind the counter, wiping down a mug that didn't need wiping. Retired state patrol, gray beard, square shoulders, eyes sharp as hell. He used to write tickets. Now he brewed bitter coffee and listened better than most therapists. He saw me and raised an eyebrow. "You look like hell." "Didn't sleep," I said. "Need to talk." He nodded toward the back booth, no questions. I slid in, dropped my duffel beside me, and started talking. No fluff, no buildup. I told him about the account, the condo, the message, the company name that wasn't mine. Every piece of it. By the time I finished, his jaw was locked tight and his hands were flat on the table. "Jesus, Ashley." "Yeah." He looked down, then back up. "That's federal theft. If he rerouted commercial driver wages and used your info for business transfers, hell, that's not just personal. That's felony level." I stared past him at the window, watching a rig roll past the lot. "He's my dad." Jake didn't flinch. "He's also a grown man who made a criminal decision. He helped me buy that condo, co-signed the loan, and you paid every cent since. Your money, your route, your time, you served, you worked. That's your life savings. If he touched it, he better answer to the law." Quick note: before we keep going, let me know which country you're watching from. I didn't say anything, just ran my thumb over the rim of the paper cup in front of me. It was cold. Jake leaned in. "What's the name again?" "The contact you emailed?" "Andrew Brody, Federal Freight Crimes. He helped me once when a broker tried shorting my pay." "Good. Brody's solid. You keep working with him. These shell companies, they don't pop up by accident. If your name's on any of that and you don't act, it could come back on you." That hit hard. He was right. I looked up at him. "You think this was a one-off?" "No." His voice was flat. "I think someone saw an opportunity and grabbed it while you were too many states away to stop it. That's not a mistake. That's a setup." I nodded. "Once, that was enough." Jake stood, grabbed a fresh cup, and poured me something strong from a pot behind the counter. No shame in being pissed, but don't let that get in the way of being smart. I took the cup and stood with him. My shoulders felt straighter. He clapped me once on the back. "You're not crazy, Ashley. You're just dealing with someone who thought you wouldn't fight back." He was wrong about one thing. I wasn't pissed. I was ready. I walked out with my duffel slung over one arm, my phone in hand, and my head clear. I didn't go back to the truck yard after leaving Jake's. Instead, I headed straight to the short-term rental I'd booked behind a used tire shop. Week to week, no questions asked. A bed, a table, a microwave that sparked if you looked at it wrong. It would do. I dropped my duffel and pulled out the fireproof case, set it on the wobbly table, and unlocked the latches. Inside was everything I had left that hadn't been stolen, thrown out, or stripped of my name. The weight of it hit me hard this time. Not the sadness, not the betrayal, the responsibility. If I didn't lock this down now, it was going to blow back on me. And I wasn't about to let my name get dragged into some freight scam because I didn't send a damn email. I started laying it all out. My Keystone contract, signed and timestamped. Bank access logs showing his IP. Screenshots of my balance before and after the deposit. The message, "Don't come home. Things changed." I added photos I'd taken with my phone just hours ago. My name missing from the mailbox, the front window stripped clean. A couple I didn't recognize hauling boxes into the upstairs unit. Gone, too, was the wreath my mom made before she passed. Probably tossed in the trash with the rest. Quick pause. Before we go further, drop your city or country in the comments. Curious where everyone's listening from. I created a new folder labeled Evidence for Brody. Everything got renamed, dated, stacked in the right order. I pulled up my email and typed out the subject line without blinking. Suspected misappropriation of active commercial driver's income and property. Perpetrator, immediate family. In the body, I kept it clean and to the point. Brody, income from a 2-month cross-country commercial contract deposited into a shared account was withdrawn without authorization. Funds rerouted to a logistics LLC I never signed off on. Also attached, photos of altered property, no name, decal removed, screenshot of text received, pay stubs from Hall, evidence of joint account activity. Name on mailbox changed. I need this on record. Let me know next steps. Ashley Monroe. I added one last attachment, close-up of the shell company name. Monroe Freight Services, LLC. No license, no dot number, no trail. Just a placeholder that swallowed up $18,000, like it never existed. I stared at the send button. That was the moment. The line between letting it slide and making it official. I clicked it. Right then, I felt like I'd pulled the pin on something I couldn't toss away. Not anymore. The room felt colder after, quieter. I closed the laptop, slid it back into the case, and locked it up tight. I didn't brush my teeth or unpack anything. Just kicked off my boots, got under the thin motel-style comforter, and shut my eyes. No second-guessing, no spiraling, no planning the next step. I'd done what I came to do, and whatever came next, it was already in motion. I woke up to a knock that wasn't from housekeeping. 2 short, 1 solid. The kind of knock that says, "I'm not here to ask permission." I checked the peephole. Andrew Brody. He looked exactly how I remembered him. Broad-shouldered, no nonsense, khakis, and a black windbreaker, even though it was already 80 outside. No badge flash, no introduction needed. I opened the door and stepped aside. He walked in like a man used to stale carpets and bolt locks, took one look around the room, then nodded at the case on the table. "That it?" I popped the latches. "Everything you asked for and then some." He pulled out the folders and started flipping. No small talk. No, "How have you been?" Just a pen tapping against the edge of the paper, while his eyes scanned through each page faster than I thought humanly possible. "Account emptied when?" he asked without looking up. 5 days ago. The morning after my last haul wrapped. Who sent the withdrawal? My dad. Same IP that always logs in when he's home. What did he say when you confronted him? I didn't. I showed up to the condo and he told me, "You don't live here anymore." No explanation. Just like that, Brody finally looked up. "Other names on the deed?" "Just mine and his. But I have a photo of the mailbox. Only his name's on it now." "She scrubbed mine off." "She?" "His new wife. Married 2 years ago. I was on the road for most of it." He nodded once and moved on. "This LLC, you didn't authorize anything?" "Nope. Never signed a form, never gave him permission to use my name or my account for anything." Quick check-in. Before we keep going, drop a comment. Where are you listening from today? Brody kept flipping, marking up a few of the pages, then slid them back into the folder and clicked the case shut. "You did half my job already," he said. "That's rare." I didn't smile. Wasn't doing it for gold stars. He tapped the case with one knuckle. "You'll hear from me in a few days." I nodded. "I'll be here." He left without shaking my hand. That told me he was already deep in it. 3 days later, my phone rang. "Monroe," he said when I answered. "You were right. The money went through a dummy company registered in Butte under the name of your father's wife's high school friend. That company's tied to 3 flagged invoices with inflated equipment charges, some over $10,000. What kind of equipment? Shipping containers, reefer trailers, all fake." I sat up. "So what's the play?" "Laundering," he said. "We think they're filtering stolen or counterfeit goods, possibly knockoff auto parts, maybe more. The Shell LLC gives them clean books on paper. Your money was used to float it." I felt my chest tighten, but not with panic. Not anymore. "They used my paycheck to start a freight scam." "That's what it looks like." He paused. "And Monroe, don't contact them. Don't go near the condo. We're building a case, and any interference muddies the water." "Understood. I'll be in touch." He hung up before I could ask anything else. I stood by the window and watched the alley behind the motel, where the wind kicked up a cloud of dust and wrappers. All I could think about was my dad sitting in that condo, feet probably kicked up, thinking he pulled one over on his daughter without a second thought. This wasn't just betrayal anymore. This was fraud, theft, organized deception. And now it had a case number. The first text came in while I was sitting at the laundromat, waiting on my last load of work clothes. "Trish, Building 3. Hey, just heard something weird. Your dad said you signed the condo over to him before you left? That true?" I stared at the message, jaw clenched. Trish was one of the few people in the complex who'd ever treated me like more than a ghost coming and going in a big rig. She used to leave baked goods at my door when I pulled in from long hauls. I didn't reply. I didn't trust myself to. A minute later, a second text lit up. "Nathan, Building 1. Saw your dad earlier. Said you moved for work and didn't want to deal with the place anymore. Whole complex thinks you just gave it to them. Bullshit." I hadn't signed over a damn thing. My name was still on the deed. My taxes were still filed from that address. I had 3 separate contracts mailed to that unit during my last run. I was living there, just not sleeping under the roof every night. They weren't just taking the space. They were scrubbing me out of it. Quick note, before we keep rolling, share what city or state you're listening from today. I pulled up Facebook. I hadn't checked his wife's profile since the blow-up. Big mistake. There were over a dozen new posts in just the last week. Pictures of the living room, my living room, painted a soft gray, with captions like, "Fresh start, clean energy." A photo of the fireplace I'd installed by hand, now covered in fake candles and coastal decor, tagged "Our Forever Place." Not one mention of me, not even in the comments. My throat burned, but I kept scrolling. Then came the kicker, another text from Trish. "Trish, not trying to get in the middle, but thought you'd want to see this." She attached a photo of a lease. I zoomed in. The new tenant upstairs, Landon Royce, signed it 2 months ago. While I was still sleeping in my rig, hauling dairy across Kansas, thinking my home was waiting for me, they didn't just replace me, they'd been planning it. I sat there in the back corner of that fluorescent-lit laundromat, my phone burning hot in my hand, the hum of dryers filling the silence I couldn't break with words even if I wanted to. I didn't post anything. I didn't rage comment. I didn't even tell Trish thanks. Because at that point, I understood exactly what was happening. They were crafting a narrative, something easy, something that would sound polite in conversation. Ashley moved for work. It was mutual. She didn't want the stress. Lies are always smoother than the truth. But here's the thing about false stories. They crack under pressure. And I'd already handed the truth to someone who knew how to squeeze. So I let the posts stay up, let the lies circulate, let them paint their picture and hang it for the neighbors to see. I didn't argue. I just kept gathering facts, because silence hits harder when you know what's coming. My phone rang 2 mornings later while I was refueling the rental car near the I-90 on-ramp. Brody. I wiped diesel off my hand, answered on the second ring. "I've got updates," he said. "You sitting down?" "Nope. I'm standing next to a pump, so make it count." He didn't waste time. The LLC's been linked to a string of falsified manifests. Garden tools listed on half the shipments, except every box that gets traced turns up empty, underweighted, or packed with auto parts we believe are counterfeit. I leaned against the car. "You think they're running fakes through Montana?" "We think they're using rural weigh stations to mask the load weight and doctored BOLs to move the freight under the radar. Looks like your name and your bank login were used to apply for a backdoor loan through a vendor financing program. You didn't sign any freight loans recently, right?" "Are you kidding?" I've barely had time to buy coffee, Brody kept going. That loan funded the shell company's equipment on paper, but the equipment never existed. It's invoice smoke. I closed my eyes and blew out a long breath. Jesus. Quick break. While you're here, tell us in the comments which state or country you're watching from. Let's keep going. He wasn't done. We're seeing connections to 3 flagged shipments and possibly 2 more pending. We believe this was designed from day one to look legitimate using your work history and wage flow. You are the camouflage. So I got robbed to fund a fake business, and the fake business is moving stolen parts under the name of someone who lives in my house. Correct. I rubbed my eyes, the corner of my jaw twitching. You want more names? What do you have? 2 guys from back in Billings, Donnie Kerr and Marcus Shaw. Always bragged about quiet routes and beating station waits. My dad played cards with them at that truck stop bar behind the Safeway. I'll run 'em. Brody's tone didn't shift, but I could hear the pace behind his words. Things were moving. Anything else I should know? I asked. Yeah, we're prepping a warrant. Your case is now triple-pronged: wage theft, wire fraud, and conspiracy to transport restricted goods. We're coordinating with Federal Logistics Enforcement and State Fraud Task Force. I let that sit. This was bigger than family drama. Bigger than a stolen paycheck. This was a freight laundering ring with my name forged onto the door. Brody continued, You stay away from the property. If you go back, even for a toothbrush, it puts the case at risk. I'm not going anywhere near it. I'll contact you when we move. Copy. He hung up. I stayed by the pump for a long minute, watching the gas meter reset even though my tank was full. Cold wind slid under my jacket, but I didn't feel it. All I could picture was my dad, feet on the coffee table, remote in hand, acting like none of this was going to catch up. His wife posting like she was the queen of a castle they built on stolen hours I'd put into blacktop. Not anymore. I wasn't the only one digging now, and they weren't the only ones being watched. The machine was moving. I wasn't the gear, I was the spark. I tossed the fuel receipt on the seat and started the engine. Let it roll. I parked 2 blocks away. Engine off, coat zipped, hood up. It was cold, early, and quiet except for a few garbage trucks making their rounds behind the neighborhood. I watched from across the street, hands stuffed in my pockets, breath steady. Every light in the condo was on. Then they came. 3 black SUVs, 2 state-marked sedans, 1 boxy, unmarked van I recognized from Jake's stories. No sirens, no loudspeakers. This wasn't a raid, it was surgical. The lead agent stepped out of the first SUV, vest on, badge visible. He walked fast but calm, like he'd done this 100 times. When he reached the walkway, he gave the nod. No one leaves. Lock it down. Within seconds, agents fanned out across the porch, the driveway, both side paths. One posted at the back gate. Another walked toward the upstairs tenants unit, clipboard in hand. The door to my condo cracked open just enough to see the edge of a man's shoulder. My father. He stepped outside in a t-shirt and house shoes, a mug still in his hand, like none of this made sense yet. Behind him she appeared, his wife, hair tied up, jaw slack. One of the agents pulled out a folder and began reading off names and businesses. I couldn't hear much from where I stood, but I knew what was in it. My file, my photos, my numbers. The paperwork they never thought would land back in front of them. Neighbors started coming out, first in 2s, then more. Phones in hand. Curious looks, whispering. Then I heard it. A woman in a pink robe turned to the man beside her and said, I thought this place was Ashley's. I didn't react, didn't smile, didn't cry, just kept my hands in my pockets and stayed where I was. Quick pause. Before we go further, let us know in the comments where you're listening from today. Inside the condo, things moved fast. 2 agents walked in with laptops and flat plastic cases. Another carried out a small filing box. A younger officer read something off a tablet. Monroe Freight Services, LLC. Principal owner listed as Daniel Monroe. That name hit the air like a gunshot. My father didn't speak. He just stood there, jaw tight, like the sound didn't make sense in his ears. An agent held up a tenant agreement. Signed and backdated lease for upstairs unit. Royce Landon. 2 months prior to reported move out of primary resident. That was me. The primary resident, the one they tried to erase. More folders were handed out, some stamped with red tabs. I saw one labeled Invoices, weight discrepancy. Another officer came out with a flash drive bag and sealed evidence envelope. His eyes swept over the small crowd forming near the sidewalk. I ducked farther into the alley, still close enough to see but out of frame. I didn't need to be front and center, I just needed to know the knock landed. Agents filed in and out for another half hour. The door stayed wide open. The woman, his woman, sat on the edge of the couch, back straight, holding her knees like she could will it all away. My father never looked at her, or at anyone else. One of the neighbors, an older man from 2 buildings over, finally said what everyone else was thinking. She's still on the deed, isn't she? That girl, that driver, that daughter they'd flushed like she was nothing. My boots scraped against gravel as I took one step back from the alley corner. This wasn't revenge. It wasn't about payback. This was a correction. A hard reset with names and dates to back it up. Another agent stepped out with more paperwork, handing it off to a man in plain clothes. As they turned, I caught a glance of something tucked under his arm. My original title sheet. Folded, marked, but still mine. That door they took from me, the one they stripped and repainted, now it was open for the right reason. And this time, they couldn't close it. The coffee was burnt. The kind that's been sitting on the warmer too long, turning bitter the second it hits your tongue. I drank it anyway. He sat across from me, hands wrapped around his mug like it gave him something to hold on to. Same hands that taught me how to check tire pressure, measure air brakes, read a road map without GPS. Now they looked older, thinner, like the blood didn't pump through them the same. We were in a roadside diner off the I-15. Vinyl booths, laminated menus, a cracked pepper shaker between us. It smelled like bleach and eggs. Neither of us had touched our food. "I didn't plan to hurt you," he said, voice low. "It just got away from me." I didn't answer. He shifted in the booth, stared down at his plate. I lost my job. Then we fell behind on the taxes. Her medical bills piled up. The condo was just sitting there. "It was mine," I said. No emotion, just fact. "You were on the road, living out of the cab. You didn't need it." I stared at him, watching how easily he said that. Like I'd left it vacant, like I didn't pay for every damn square foot with hours of drive time and nights parked in freezing truck stops eating gas station tuna. "You made a choice," I said. "Don't make it about the situation." He didn't argue, just stared into his coffee like it might offer him a better excuse than the one he'd practiced. "I thought you'd understand," he muttered. I pushed my plate forward. "I do. That's why I'm not calling the police myself." That landed. His shoulders sank. His mouth opened, but no words came out. "Quick note. While you're listening, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. Let's keep going." He finally looked up. His eyes were dull. No spark, no anger. Just the tired weight of getting caught. "I'm sorry, Ash." I nodded once. "I believe part of that." He glanced at the waitress walking past, like maybe she'd rescue him from the silence. She didn't. He cleared his throat. "They said you kept your name on the deed. You gonna stay?" "Yeah, I'm keeping the place I figured." He paused. "I'll stay out of your way." "You will." The silence stretched. A train rolled by a few blocks down. Neither of us moved. He looked like a man who'd spent weeks unraveling, one thread at a time, until the version of himself he thought was safe to show the world was gone. No more hero, no more helper. Just a man who took what didn't belong to him and told himself it was fine. "I should have called," he said. "I should have asked." I slid out of the booth. "Yeah, you should have." He didn't stand, didn't follow. I paid for my coffee and left the change. When I stepped outside, the wind hit harder than I expected. I pulled my hood up and didn't look back. Inside, he sat there. Same booth, same coffee. Hands curled around the empty mug like it still had something left to give. I didn't knock when I walked up the porch steps. I didn't have to. This place was mine again. Paperwork final, fraud case closed, name cleared, name restored. Deed in hand, title recorded, no co-signers, no ghosts. The sun was just starting to set behind the trees lining the edge of the complex, throwing that sharp orange light across the siding. I held the flag under my arm, custom-stitched canvas, thick navy, a simple white rig silhouette in the center. My rig. Long nose, flatbed profile, clean, unmistakable. I mounted it by the door, drilled straight into the beam, 2 turns, and done. Wind caught it almost immediately. It snapped once, hard, then flowed steady. Claim staked. Then I turned to the wreath, pine sprigs, knotted rope from a busted tie-down I kept for too many years, and one polished brass medallion dead center. Western Ridge Logistics, my first company, my first run, my first paycheck. I hung it on the door, dead center, no frills, no apologies. Inside, the house smelled like cinnamon and diesel and brewed coffee, familiar, warm, alive. The fireplace crackled low, casting shadows on the old wood floors. Jake sat in my recliner with a mug in one hand and a smirk on his face. "About damn time you flew your own flag," he said. Two of my friends from the road, Manny and Rochelle, laughed from the couch, swapping stories about iced-over way stations and the best late-night fried chicken between Boise and Spokane. I kicked off my boots, dropped my duffel in the hall, and grabbed the coffee Jake handed me without asking. Quick note, before we close this out, share where you're listening from. One more story to finish right. We talked for hours. No one mentioned the past. No one asked about him. It didn't need to come up. What mattered was this. He was gone, and I was still here. Later that night, when the mugs were empty and the laughter slowed, I stepped back out onto the porch. Cold air, quiet street. The flag fluttered above me, steady under the porch light. The condo didn't feel like recovery anymore. It felt like ownership. It felt like earned ground. It felt like peace.